Hello, my name is Karen Montes, and this is my signature assignment for EDP 310, Understanding the Brain. For this assignment, I chose the topic of the workings of the adolescent brain. So let's get started. First things first, the brain. Let's talk about what is the brain. So the brain is arguably the most important organ in our body. The brain is the center for memory, touch, emotion, motor skills, vision, breathing, and every process that regulates our body. And more about the brain. We could talk endless things about the brain, but I just want to share a little more with you. The brain does not come programmed. We learn things as we experience life. Therefore, who we are today depends on what we have lived. So, for example, the language you are exposed to in childhood filters the ability to hear the specific sounds of your language. The brain is constantly rewiring, and it changes as you experience new things. So it's a very cool thing. So now I want to talk about teenagers. This is the teenage brain, right? The adolescent brain. So first, to recap on the introductory slides, I mentioned how we are who we are today because of where we have been. So, but at one point, we were all teenagers. And during this period, our body is going through many physical changes as well as intense neurological changes. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, for example, plays a role in controlling impulses. This doesn't fully mature until your early 20s. Teenagers are more likely to participate in more risky situations and have a harder time than adults regulating their emotions. So, tough time for teenagers. We've all been there. So why this topic? Why am I talking about, brains and teenagers? I personally chose this topic because I'm an educator. I think it's very important that we learn about the brain of who we are educating. As an educator for adolescents and having been a teenager in high school myself, I recall learning situations that were just not appropriate for us. And now I understand why. I understand that, my brain wasn't where it is at now. Um, for example, teenagers lack self-control. They're risk takers. They are more self-aware. They're poor decision makers, and they lack attention span. So it's not a very good combination, right? So why is it important to know about the teenage brain as educators? Well, as educators, we can make the learning experience much more fun for adolescents, much more engaging, much more adapted to where their brain is at in that stage. Educators can use different approaches according to the brain stage that they're in. So here's an example that I know many of you will relate to. So teenagers are very self-aware to the point of becoming anxious in social situations when they are put on the spot. And many educators love randomly picking on a student to answer a question. But that brings so much anxiety to the student. So that's not really a good teaching strategy. And learning things like this can help educators, support students and make them feel more comfortable in the classroom and willing to participate on their own. So I want to touch more on self-control in teenagers because I think we all have dealt with a teenager, even now, that we're adults. There still might be teenagers in your life where you might be teaching someone like I am. And, they can be a little bit harsh. They have attitude. They do lack attention span. And this article that I came across just couldn't have worded it better. So I want to share this quote with you. So As quoted in the article, The Teenage Brain, Self-Control, adolescents have no self-control and no prefrontal cortex, basically being all gasoline, no brakes, and no steering wheel. And of course, the no prefrontal cortex is just an overgeneralization. Teenagers very much have that. Um, but I've dealt with my fair share of attitude, and I think it's important to note that we must not take it personal. Instead, realize what is going on in their brain and also maybe in their lives. Educators have much more power than we think. Some students just want to be heard. So how does this affect teenagers, teenage students in the classroom? In a recent study of why students are less motivated to learn math and science in eighth grade, found that teacher influence was a huge part of the reason. Students value learner-centered practices that involve promoting high-order thinking, honoring student voices, creating supportive relations, and adapting instruction to individual and developmental needs. So I think this is a really good opportunity for educators to learn how to teach, teenagers that are going through so much change, not only, physically, but in their brain. So let's change the narrative for adolescent students. By trying to understand their brain development, we will be able to support them in a much more suitable learning environment and prepare them for the future. Thank you.